Hi, South Elementary School, Mr. Riley here, and I'm here to continue on the One School, One Book, Flora and Ulysses. And I'm here today to read chapters 25 through 27. So chapter 25 is Seal Blubber. Flora's father's car seat smelled like butterscotch and ketchup, and Flora was in the back seat, where the smell of butterscotch and ketchup was the most powerful. She had a Bootsy Boots shoebox with Ulysses in it on her lap, and she was feeling car sick even though the car wasn't moving yet. She was also feeling the tiniest bit overwhelmed. For instance, here was Ulysses sitting in a shoebox, knowing that there was a shovel in the trunk of the car and that the man driving the car had been instructed to whack him over the head with the shovel. And the squirrel didn't look worried or afraid. He looked happy. And then there was Flora's mother, the person who had given Flora the shoebox. To protect your little friend on his journey, we'll just put this washcloth in here as a comfy blanket. She was standing at the door, smiling and waving goodbye to them, as if she weren't truly a murder-planning arch nemesis. Talk about the darkness of 10,000 hands. Nothing was as it seemed. Flora looked down at the squirrel. Of course, he was not what he seemed either. And that was a good thing. An incandesto thing. Flora felt a shiver of belief of possibility pass through her. Her parents had no idea what kind of squirrel they were dealing with. Her father put the car in reverse. As he backed out the driveway, Flora saw William Spiver standing in Tootsie's front yard. He was looking up at the sky. He turned his head slowly in the direction of the car. His glasses flashed in the sun. Tootie appeared. She was waving one of his pink gloves as if it were a flag of surrender. "Stop the car," she shouted. "Step on the gas," Flora said to her father. She did not want to talk to Tootie. She definitely did not want to talk to William Spiver. She didn't want to see herself reflected in his dark glasses. She had her own thoughts about the random and confusing nature of the universe. She didn't need his too. Also, she was in a hurry. There was a murder to stop, a superhero to mentor, villains to vanquish, darkness to eradicate. She couldn't waste time trading stupid thoughts with William Spiver. "Flora Belle," shouted William Spiver, almost as if he were reading her mind. "I've had some interesting thoughts." He ran toward the car and fell into the bushes. "Great Aunt Tootie," he shouted, "I need your assistance." "What in the world is going on?" said her father. He slammed on the brakes. "It's just a temporary blind boy," said Flora. "And Mrs. Tickham from next door, she's his aunt, his great aunt, never mind. It doesn't make any difference. Keep going." But it was too late. Tootie had helped William Spiver out of the bushes, and the two of them were walking toward the car. William Spiver was smiling. "Hello," her father called out to them. I'm George Buckman. How do you do?" Flora's father introduced himself to everyone all the time, even if the person was someone he had already met. It was an annoying and extremely persistent habit. "Hello, sir," said William Spiver. "I am William Spiver. I would like to speak to your daughter, Flora Belle." "I don't have time to talk to you right now, William Spiver," said Flora. "Great Aunt Tootie, can you assist me? Will you take me to Flora's side of the vehicle?" "Please excuse me while I escort this extremely disturbed and neurotic child to the other side of the car," said Tootie. Certainly, said Flora's father. And then he said to absolutely no one, George Buckman, "How do you do?" Flora sighed. She looked down at Ulysses, considering human beings she was surrounded by. Believing in a squirrel seemed like an increasingly reasonable plan of action. "I wanted to apologize," said William Spiver, who was now standing beside her window. "For what?" said Flora. "It wasn't the worst poetry I've ever heard." "Oh," said Flora. "Also, I'm sorry that I wouldn't take my glasses off when you asked me to." "Take them off now then," said Flora. "I can't," said William Spiver. "They've been glued to my head by evil forces beyond my control." "You lie," said Flora. "Yes. No. I don't. I do. I'm engaging in hyperbole. It seems as if the glasses have been glued to my head." He lowered his voice. "Actually, I'm afraid that if I take my glasses off, the whole world will unravel." "That's stupid," said Flora. "There are bigger things to worry about. For instance, Flora realized that she was going to say something to William Spiver that she hadn't intended to say. The words were out of her mouth before she could stop them. "Do you know what an arch nemesis is?" she whispered. "Of course I do," William Spiver whispered back. "Right," said Flora. "Well, Ulysses has got one. It's my mother." William Spiver's eyebrows rose above his dark glasses. Flora was pleased to note that he looked properly surprised and shocked. "Speaking of Ulysses," said Tootie, "I have some poetry that I would like to recite to him." "Are you sure that now is the time for a poetry recitation?" said William Spiver. Ulysses sat up straighter in her Bootsy Boots shoebox. He looked at Tootie, he nodded. "I was moved by your poetry," said Tootie to the squirrel. Ulysses popped out his chest. "And I have some poetry that I would like to recite to you in honor of the recent transformations in your life." Tootie put a hand on her chest. "This is Rilke," she said. "You sent me out beyond your recall. Go to the limits of your longing. Embody me, flare up like flame, and make big shadows I can move in." Ulysses stared up at Tootie, his eyes bright. "Flare up like a flame," said Flora's father from the front seat. "That is moving, yes. That is quite lovely, flaring up like flame. Thank you so much. We will have to be on our way now, but will you return?" said William Spiver. Got a little illustration here as well. Flora looked up and saw William Spiver's words hanging in the air above him like a small tattered flag. "But will you return?" "I'm just spending the afternoon with my father, William," Spiver said. She said, "It's not like I'm heading off to the South Pole. Terrible things can happen to you. Had you done an extensive piece on what to do if you were stranded at the South Pole. Their advice could be summed up in 3 simple words: eat seal blubber. It was astonishing, really, what people could live through. Flora felt cheered up all of a sudden, just thinking about eating seal blubber and doing impossible things, surviving when the odds were against her and her squirrel. They would figure out a way to outwit the arch nemesis. They would triumph over the shovel and the sack, and they would triumph together like Dolores and Ancandesto. "I'm glad," said William Spiver. "I'm glad that you're not going to the South Pole, Florabelle." Flora's father cleared his throat. "George Buckman," he said. "How do you do?" "It was nice to meet you, sir," said William Spiver. "Remember those words," said Tootie. Flare up like flame," said Flora's father. "I was speaking to the squirrel," said Tootie. "Of course," said Flora's father. "My apologies, the squirrel." "I will see you again," said William Spiver. "Between the arch nemesis," said Flora. "I will see you again," said William Spiver. "We're off to fight evil," said Flora as her father backed the car out of the driveway. William Spiver waved at the car. "I will see you again." He seemed so stuck on the idea of seeing her again that Flora didn't have the heart to tell him that he was waving in the wrong direction. All right, chapter 26, Spies Don't Cry. Flora's father was a cheerful driver. He kept his left hand at 10 o'clock on the steering wheel and his right hand at 2. He never took his eyes off the road. He did not go fast. "Speed," her father often said. This is what will kill you. That and taking your eyes off the road. Never ever take your eyes off the road. "Pop," said Flora, "I need to talk to you." "Okay," said her father. He kept his eyes on the road. About what? That sack and that shovel. "What sack?" said her father. "What shovel?" It occurred to Flora that her father would make an excellent spy. He never really answered questions. Instead, when asked a question, he simply responded with a nifty sidestep or a question of his own. For instance, when her parents were getting their divorce, Flora had a conversation with her father that went something like this. "Flora, are you and Mom getting divorced?" Flora's father: "Who says we're getting divorced?" Flora: "Mom." Flora's father: "Is that what she said?" Flora said: "That's what she said." Flora's father: "I wonder why she said that." And then he started to cry. Spies probably didn't cry, but still. "There's a sack and a shovel in the trunk of the car, Pop," said Flora. "Is there?" said her father. "I saw you put them in there." "It's true. I did put a sack and a shovel in the trunk of the car." The criminal element said that it was a good idea to engage in relentless, open-ending questioning. If you question with enough ferocity, people are sometimes surprised into answering questions that they do not intend to answer. When in doubt, question more, question faster. Why, said Flora. I intend to dig a hole, said her father. For what, said Flora. A thing that I am going to bury. What thing are you going to bury? A sack. Why are you going to bury a sack? Because your mother asked me to. Why did she ask you to bury a sack? Her father tapped his fingers on the steering wheel. He stared straight ahead. Why did she ask me to bury a sack? Why did she ask me to bury a sack? That's a good one. Hey, I know. Do you want to get something to eat? What? Said Flora. How about some lunch? Said her father. For the love of Pete, said Flora. Or some breakfast. How about we stop and eat a meal? Any meal. Flora sighed. The criminal element advised stalling, delaying, obfuscation of every possible sort. When it came to dealing with a criminal, her father wasn't a criminal. Not exactly, but he had been enlisted in the service of villainy. Basically, he was in cahoots with an arch nemesis, so maybe it would be good to stall. To delay the inevitable showdown by going into a restaurant. Besides, the squirrel was hungry and he would need to be strong for the battle ahead. Okay, said Flora. Okay, sure, let's eat. And that was chapter 26. Chapter 27 is The World in All Its Smelly Glory. Okay, sure, let's eat. What wonderful words those are, thought Ulysses. Let's eat. Talk about poetry. The squirrel was happy. He was happy because he was with Flora. He was happy because he had the words from Tootie's poem flowing through his head and heart. He was happy because he was going to be fed soon, and he was happy because he was, well, happy. He climbed out of the shoebox and put his front paws on the door and his nose out the open window. He was a squirrel riding in a car on a summer day with someone he loved. His whiskers and nose were in the breeze, and there was so many smells. Overflowing trash cans, just cut grass, sun-warmed patches of pavement, the lonely riches of dirt, earthworms, lonely smelling too, often difficult to distinguish from the smell of dirt. Dog, more dog, dog again. Oh, dogs, small dogs, large dogs, foolish dogs. The torturing of dogs was the most reliable pleasure of a squirrel's existence. The tang of fertilizer, a faint whiff of birdseed, something baking, the hidden hint of nuttiness, pecan, acorn, the small apologetic don't mind me odor of mouse, and the ruthless stench of a cat. Cats were terrible. Cats were never to be trusted. Never. The world in all its smelly glory and all its treachery and joy of nuttiness washed over Ulysses, ran through him, filled him. He could smell everything. He could even smell the blue of the sky. He wanted to capture it. He wanted to write it down. He wanted to tell Flora. He turned and looked at her. Keep your eyes open, she said to him. Ulysses nodded. The words from Tootsie's poem sounded in his head. Flare up like a flame. Yes, he thought, that's what I'll do. I'll flare up like a flame, and I'll write it all down. And that was Flora and Ulysses, chapters 25 to 27.